Welcome to episode 239 of the Shared Security Show. And joining me this week is someone I actually got to see in person last week.
Yes.
Co-host Kevin Johnson.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So what episode is this?
This is 239. I mislabeled.
Okay, that threw me off because
Yeah.
I actually thought we'd already done 238, but the screen said 238. No, it's that's.
I should have prepped you on that.
Yeah, you just messed me up, man. That's all. It's all.
Yeah.
It's okay. I can't count anyways.
Counting is hard. Math is hard. I know.
Yeah.
But we are back. So we had I wouldn't say a week off. We never have a week off here.
I was going to say a week off, man.
I did
Vegas, right?
It was a week in Vegas. Kevin, you were there. In fact, Kevin joined the Bishop Fox live stream that we did on Friday. So he was one of the 13 people we interviewed in 7 hours. It was quite a feat. But we did.
I can't believe you guys sat there that whole day doing that. And I did half an hour, and
yeah,
that was.
It was fun. It was fun. Yeah. We interviewed a lot of great people, and we'll link that in the show notes. And of course, Kevin.
Yeah,
Kevin is the highlight of.
I don't know about that. The live stream guy laughed at me. That was good.
Yeah.
He said your session it made my afternoon, and I'm thinking to myself, man, your standards aren't very high.
But yeah, it was a very busy week in Vegas. I was there the entire week, which is entirely too long to spend in Las Vegas, in my opinion.
You know how people say that, fish and guests start to stink after like 4 days or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Vegas, it's 2. I can fly into Vegas and fly out the next day and be fine. But if I stay longer than that, it's just, oh God, why am I here? And it's sad because Vegas is actually a good, it's got lots of great food. It's got things to do, even if you don't gamble or whatever, which I don't, because I can do math. So it's just, I don't know, it's just overwhelmingly not where I want to be, I think is what
it's like the cantina in Mos Eisley, right?
Absolutely. But writ big.
Yes. So we're back, and we have quite a few interesting stories this week to discuss on the show. And
we think they are.
Yeah, I think they are. Yeah. The first story is about Cisco getting hacked by a ransomware gang, and this was the one highlight I want to talk about. Well, first of all, Cisco obviously being a ginormous company. Getting hacked by a ransomware gang is, kind of a big deal. In fact, they targeted employees who happen to be using a box folder, and they were able to pivot and do some traditional, things that we see attackers do on a network. I also found it interesting that they were able to get the employees' credentials through Chrome, because Chrome synced passwords, right?
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
This is one of those attacks, and the article that you're linked to talks about other organizations that were targeted through this.
There were more than just that. Yeah. Exactly.
This is very, I think back to the conversation we had about Marriott and that hotel, right? I think it's actually harder for an organization the size of Cisco to prevent this level of attack than for Bishop Fox or Security is, right? And it's not because we're better than them. Obviously, Security is and Bishop Fox are better than Cisco, but or something. And but the end user is always going to be that weakness. The person screwing up, and you're always going to screw up. And we've done it, right? I know. I won't claim to have never read an email and thought, "Ooh, I could." Well, that's okay, and not thought about it or whatever.
So to me, the key part of this attack, though, was that they used this technique called MFA fatigue.
Yes.
So to me, this is I mean, it's the first time I knew that this type of attack was out there, but I haven't actually seen it like referenced in like a real attack.
Really?
Yeah. So,
See,
so for those of you that don't know what this
yeah,
so MFA fatigue is where an attacker sends a high volume of requests to accept essentially like, hey, you're using two-factor. Do you accept this,
yeah.
connection or
And
whatever it is?
and to be
Yeah,
clear, the attacker is not sending the request. The
correct.
attacker is
Yes.
causing the system to send the
Yes.
request. Like, for example, if you use a Microsoft product and you have MFA turned on and you're using the
Right.
Microsoft Authenticator, it pops up and says, do you want to approve
Mm-hmm.
this login attempt, right? And so they just do it over and over and
So you
over
get sick
and
of it
over.
and just approve it, or yeah.
Or accidentally approve it, right?
Yes.
Like I've had that almost happen.
Oh
Luckily,
yeah.
when it was me actually logging in, I went to unlock my phone, and I have biometrics on my phone, and I wasn't paying attention as closely as I should. And when I went to put my fingerprint on the phone, this is but when the fingerprint reader, my old phone, where it was on the phone face, right? I went to put my fingerprint on, and it registered, and then I went to do it again for some reason, and I almost clicked approve on the request. Now, and I went, oh wait. Now, luckily, that was me doing it, not right in this case.
Yeah.
I was lucky. So I've seen people accidentally do it. We've actually pulled it off in attacks, in pen tests.
Yeah.
We've gotten our customer to approve that
Right.
request. To me, I agree 100% with you. The interesting part about this attack is that public claim.
Mm-hmm.
I think it shows a problem with a normal setup. The way they do those notifications, they should not ever fatigue the system, right? Like
That's a great point.
user,
Yeah.
there is no reason to send me 4,000 requests to approve
No.
a login request. And now, don't get me wrong.
It should be a trigger.
Samsung does it, right? If I
Mhm.
log in on the website to my Samsung account on my phone, I get a notification. And the way it works on Samsung, I actually think it's a good system. It
Mhm.
says to me, hey, there is a request for two-factor, to approve a login. Did you ask to log in? And if you click no, it blocks the attempt. If you click yes, it then says, okay, do you want to approve the login? Like, it's actually a two-step process in and of itself, which I kind of like. Whereas like my Blizzard login and my Microsoft login, both of which use authenticators like that,
Yeah.
they just kind of say, hey, do you approve this? And if you say yes, it's approved. Those things shouldn't ask more than twice or three times at most, right? Because within a period of time. And I don't understand why so many of the systems that we've tested, I'm assuming this one as well,
Yeah.
asked enough times to frustrate the person at the other end.
Yeah.
Right? That's a problem.
It is. It is. So, that's just something to keep in mind for people listening to the podcast, right? Of, if you're getting prompted without your knowledge, right? If you did not initiate a two-factor authentication request and you're getting a flood of these, that might be an indication that you're probably being hacked. So
somebody's attempting to log in into you.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely.
You want your organization to be secure and compliant and to have a healthy culture, but your employees' lack of awareness makes you vulnerable to data theft, fraud, and compliance penalties. It's frustrating that the boring, static training content that's being used today has failed to improve employees' ability to defend against cyber attacks. At ClickArmor, we know that without using gamification, it's extremely hard to get staff to understand how to avoid threats. Our gamified simulations and challenges have provided a 50% average improvement in thousands of employees' ability to spot phishing threats. Go to clickarmor.ca/shared security to get your free gamified phishing assessment for up to 500 employees. You'll see quickly how gamified simulations can help your team be more resilient and compliant and help avoid costly ransomware and fraud incidents. Let ClickArmor help you go from being an underappreciated, stressed out fall guy to being an innovative leader who's the catalyst for greater productivity in your organization.
So, moving on to our next story, which is nearly 1,900 Signal messenger accounts were potentially, and I say that in quotes, potentially compromised in the Twilio hack. So if you don't know what Twilio is, that is the SMS verification code service that the popular Signal app, which is an end-to-end encrypted messaging app, uses because they make you register your phone number, which we just talked about phone numbers as identifiers. If you want to listen to 2 episodes ago, had a good discussion about that. And this is not a ding on Signal by any means. And I do want to state too that Signal was not compromised. So, people's messages were still encrypted. There was no compromise of the Signal end-to-end encryption. This was the service that uses, that utilizes the SMS verification and there were a very specific number of users that were targeted, like 3, I think, is what
3 phone numbers.
Yeah. 3 specific phone numbers in an attempt to essentially re-register that account to another phone. So very similar to what we see with SIM swapping, right? Where, people the phone company can be social engineered into, changing the phone number of somebody's accounts. And then all of a sudden now you're getting messages. So there would be the potential of possibly they're identifying, a certain phone number of a Signal user and then potentially receiving messages from someone to that number. And that's really what happened here. So interesting. One of the things that can mitigate this is if you have Signal, you definitely want to set up the Signal PIN feature, which essentially provides you another layer for the registration of your phone number with Signal. So that's a good thing to set up. I don't know if that was being used or not in this case, but again, it talks about the vectors here were phishing and of course social engineering in this attack.
I think, to me, another interesting part of this is the interconnectedness of the applications we work with, right?
Oh, yes.
Signal is a system. I know you use it. I use it, right?
All the time.
We focus on that because of the focus on security that they've put in, and yet for very good reasons, I'm sure they've used this third-party system to handle this notification, which makes sense, right? You don't build everything yourself. It's
sure. It's hard.
And that had a problem, and that hit this. And I was just talking yesterday on a webcast I was doing. It was a panel about IoT, right? And we were discussing, the sheer amount of complexity in the systems we build that we don't even understand is there. Like what is I know for me, I had no concept they were using Twilio for Signal, right? And I knew they were using something to send SMS out. Well, let me rephrase that. I guessed they were using something, but I didn't know. And when I first read about the Twilio problem, I never put that together with Signal.
Yeah, and the fact that what I get out of this too is that, again, phishing attack and social engineering used to dupe employees into giving away their credentials.
Yeah. Again,
I'm sure Signal, Moxie Marlinspike, his company, very smart guy, has a great team over there. They did their due diligence in terms of making sure Twilio was secure, right? the APIs and connections and those things, but you can do all of that due diligence. But again, somebody that gets phished, that's been the big issue.
Yeah, it's the weakest link is the user.
The weakest
and
link.
We've talked about this a million times. It's not that users are dumb. It's
right.
that, they're not thinking. They're not. It's funny. My wife and I were just watching. So my wife got me into Korean dramas, and we were watching the Attorney Woo show on Netflix. And tonight's the last episode of the season, and we were watching the almost last episode last night, and it was about an Amazon-like company in Korea that one of the database admins clicked the link.
Yep.
And, got hit. Not trying to do bad stuff, not trying to be dumb.
Right.
Just, hey,
that's how it happens.
Made a mistake. Spoiler alert. And
you ruined it.
I know, I ruined the whole show. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. So our last story of the week, and one of my favorites actually, is Facebook and Instagram rewrite websites through their in-app browser that can track every single interaction. Now, when I first read this, I thought, well, of course.
Yeah.
that's what they do. No surprise. But I bring this up on the show because a lot of people don't realize that when you click a link in a social post, now specific to Instagram and Facebook, not so much in Twitter. Now, Twitter has its own thing where they'll actually run, I believe they run kind of like a security scan on that link, if I'm not mistaken, for malware.
I believe you're right.
But Facebook and Instagram, those links open up in an in-app browser. So essentially uses a thing called WebKit, right, Kevin? That creates, I guess to the user, you could say you think you're in Safari or Firefox or whatever your mobile browser is, but you're essentially in a browser that's developed by Facebook and Instagram. And of course, they can track.
Yeah.
You click the link. What did you click within that? What type of interactions are you doing?
Well, and keep in mind, the browser is what renders the display.
Right.
So they're able to modify that any way they want at that point. The thing that I find interesting about this is this article talks about it and says, we don't know how this got in here. We don't know whether they did it on purpose. But it's really hard to write your own browser. And I'm like,
well, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think this was an accident. I don't think Facebook's
Absolutely
like, oh my gosh, this is so weird. We compiled it and it had a browser in it. We don't know where that came from. But,
so strange. Yeah.
I do laugh at the article's recommendation. And the article's recommendation.
I agree.
Yeah. When you click a link like this, tell it to open in a separate browser if that's an option. And if it's not, copy the link. And I'm thinking to myself, I get it, right? Like, that's awesome. To me, that's the type of recommendation that we tell people, like, change your password every 2 weeks because your password's compromised. It's a useless advice. Users aren't going to change that, right? In my opinion, just be aware they're tracking it. Right?
Exactly. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, because let's be blunt. So many websites load the Facebook code anyways when you go to the website.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not demeaning the research here. I think it's great that they put it together and prove it. I think it's good to let people know this is happening. But Facebook is tracking all this stuff already. This just makes it easier for them to track it. I'd like to focus there, right? Like, Facebook knows what you're doing. Facebook is trying stuff. We've talked about this so many times in this show, how hard it is to remove yourself from the Facebook ecosystem in any way, right? That it's just, I don't know, it's just nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I agree. This is definitely by design. And I also, one point I would agree in the article is that obviously Facebook has taken a huge hit when Apple released their
Yes.
app transparency controls that basically block all of Facebook's trackers if you do choose to do that on iOS. And that's a huge hit to them. And so, of course, they are going to find just other ways to do the same thing that they've been doing, which we already know about, right?
It's their business model.
It's a business, so they make money. Absolutely.
Yeah. Whether we like it or agree with it or not,
That's right.
It is their business model, and they are going to do what they can to track that kind of stuff.
Yeah. You are the product, as we always say. So. Well, it sounds like that is all we have time for this week, Kevin. Scott, hopefully everyone has noticed Scott is not here for this episode.
I would assume they would notice.
We forgot to even say that.
Right.
But,
we never even commented on like, oh yeah, he's
not here anymore. Yeah. No, he's not. We had a scheduling conflict with Scott this week, but he will be back next week. So we're kind of handling things in the stories this week. But yeah. It's good to be back, and yeah, we're just gonna keep resting from DEF CON in a week in Vegas.
I think I'm almost caught up on my sleep. This morning I woke up at 6:30, so I'm getting closer to my normal wake up time. I normally when I travel I don't adjust to the time zone.
All of us East Coasters. Yeah. I know.
So cool. Well, man, it was great seeing you last week. And
it was awesome seeing you in person. I was just telling, I made a post on Twitter that this is the first time I've seen Kevin in person in years. It has been years.
And we're talking years, including non-COVID years.
Yes.
Exactly. It's
crazy.
The last DEF CON that I attended was DEF CON 19.
Yeah.
I realized that right before I went out.
I think that was the same time. I think that was the last one I attended too.
Yeah.
So
I was supposed to go to 21, and 21 is where James Jardine and I pulled our talk.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep. And so I went to Vegas. I just didn't go to DEF CON, and I've not been to DEF CON since. And not because of that, just the biggest problem with DEF CON is, for me, other than the fact it's in Vegas, is it's in August, which is when we're ramping up, to third and fourth quarter.
Sure.
It's just
same.
Busy.
Always difficult. But all right. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and we will talk to everyone next week. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, hit that like and subscribe button. To catch all the latest from the show, visit our website, sharedsecurity.net. Follow us on Twitter at SharedSec, and join our Reddit community on the Shared Security Show subreddit.